jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
You're listening to 99.3 FM, WBTV-LP Burlington, and online at 993wbtv.org. And now from the Media Factory in Burlington, Vermont, this is Folk Talk. Hi, this is Rik Palieri of Folk Talk, along with Jason Baker.
Hello, folks.
Jason is over here on the other side of the council here, the board, because we have a very special guest in the studio, and Tom Breiding is here from over in Pennsylvania, and he was here as our guest for the Songwriter's Notebook. And we're really delighted to have Tom here to talk about his music, talk about his life, how he works with the unions, the miners' union in particular. I met Tom, we met together over at the Woody Guthrie Folk Festival, right, Tom?
That's right, yeah.
And it was really, really wonderful to have the chance to meet, and, you know, I was listening to your presentation. You did a very special presentation over at the Woody Guthrie Festival about the more or less the history of the miners' union, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. I had put out an album about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I guess now, that contained a lot of songs that I had written that documented events about the early formation of the miners' union in West Virginia.
And the thing was that you were so detailed, not just about the past. And a lot of people, when you talk about coal miners and folk music, you know, they're all thinking about the old songs, the great old, you know, from, you know, Aunt Molly Jackson, you know, and the songs of Harlan County and all of those songs that came from years ago. And those songs are really precious to our folk genre. But there's also new voices out there. There are new people who, like yourself, who are concerned about the plight of the coal miners in today's world. And I wanted our audience here at Folk Talk to get a little idea of some of these men and women. You know, are there women coal miners or?
Sure. Yep. They're obviously a minority. There aren't a whole lot, but I forget the first woman coal miner in West Virginia. I think was in the early 1970s, I believe. And there's a woman representative now in the United Mine Workers International, Tanya. I forget Tanya. I guess I forget Tanya's last name. So if she's listening, I apologize.
Well, I think that's the thing that you're doing, Tom, is that you are the storyteller, telling other people's stories. And from the conversation we had earlier today, I can see how important that is and how those stories are the stories that we don't know. I mean, we know Harlan County. We know a lot of the old history of the coal miners. We don't know what's going on today. And that's what you're doing. And I know that you wanted to start off with a special song because your guitar is in an unusual tuning. What kind of tuning do you have it in?
I'm not even sure. I think it's an open D, I think.
All right.
I don't know.
Yeah, so that's, Tom was going to do this song. And why don't you give us a little history of the song and then do it, okay?
Well, one of the things I'm proudest of is being able to come up with songs when I'm asked to write them. And that's been the relationship that I've had with the United Mine Workers. When they've been in need to document a certain story or a situation, they'll come to me and ask me to write a song. And that's what they did to commemorate the 50-year anniversary of the Farmington mine disaster in my home state of West Virginia. It was a significant disaster because it was kind of the mine disaster to end all disasters, similar to World War I being the war to end all wars. So we know that there have been disasters since, but not quite on that scale, at least not until 2011 or so, anything that had come close. And it led to legislation to prevent that type of massive explosion, killing so many men who were under the ground. And when they asked me to write the song, I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to go about it until I found, I did some research myself and discovered just how fascinating the story was. And it wasn't just the story of the blast or the few days that followed before they sealed the mine, which was on fire. It was burning under the ground. But for 9 years after the events that took place, the recovery efforts, which, by the way, the recovery effort, which went on for 9 years, was actually mining coal. That was their recovery effort. They dug coal to find the bodies of the fallen from the year previous, and that went on for 9 years. And the number 9, so the song, I worried about being repetitive with the number 9, but the number 9 is in the song, or in the story rather, throughout. It was the number 9 mine. There were 99 miners under the ground when it blew. The fires burned for 9 days before they sealed it, and the recovery effort lasted for 9 years. Mm. Morning in November, year of 68, a blast blew out Llewellyn, and the ground began to shake in the mine. The number 9. And 21 found freedom from the fires beneath the ground. It took 10 long years for others, and 19 were never found in the mine. Number 9. And there were tears of joy for those whose lives were spared, and prayers for their brothers remaining there in the mine. Number 9. And for 9 days and nights, those fires went on to burn. And 10 mornings later, this news their families learned: they've sealed the mine. The number 9. And in the year that followed, the survivors organized a team to find the bodies of the brothers where they lie in the mine. The number 9. And they opened up the slope in the fall of 69. And those brothers of the fallen, they were the first to walk inside that mine. The number 9. And before you know it, well, they were back to mining coal and digging for the bodies of every living soul who died in the mine. Number 9. And after 9 more years of mining, all but 19 there were found. And to this very day, they remain under the ground in the mine. The number 9. And some never knew the peril fate held for them that day. And some were found together where they tried to walk away from the mine. The number 9. A law was passed, a promise. They would not die in vain. A tragedy like Farmington would never be again. Like in the mine. The number 9. Where 21 found freedom from the fires beneath the ground. 59 uncovered, 19 never found in the mine. Number 9. 240 acres set aside, and a statue bears the names of the 78 who died in that mine. Number 9.
Wow, that was a really beautiful song, Tom.
Thank you.
It was really nice.
Thanks, Rick.
You know, I think that a lot of the listeners and viewers probably don't know what it's like to go down into that mine. And when I was in Poland many years ago, I was guest of the Polish coal miners and spent a whole day way down underneath the earth. And the thing that I found, it was very peaceful down there, isn't it? There's something There's something that is very peaceful, and you know they're blowing in the air. You feel that air. Right. It's a very strange feeling to know that you're down underneath the ground, and you have this different world that's down there, and that's why like you had Merle Travis writing the songs about coal miners and the lust for the mine. And Tom, when you were talking with some of the different coal miners, we were talking about this on the TV show, but what kind of insight did you get from them about why they kept working down in that mine?
Well, I have one of my friends, Ryan. I took a group of young boys to go meet him. We met at a Burger King for lunch, and he wanted to tell them what it was like to go under the ground. And he told those boys, he said, my father was a miner, my grandfather was a miner, and he said they could pay me $100 an hour to do nothing but sweep this floor in this Burger King. And he said, I'd rather go under the ground and mine coal. It was in his blood. So I think that's part of it. Another good friend of mine who was a miner, he was a college graduate. And he wound up going in the mine because it was the best paying job he could find. And he's still there. And his name is Evan. And Evan, it's funny, you mentioned that about the air blowing in, because the first thing people assume is that if you're down in a coal mine, that it's always 55 degrees, because it's always 55 degrees under the ground. And he laughed. He said, well, you know, in the mine, they have to keep the air flowing. He said, if it's 35 degrees above, it's 35 degrees below. And if it's 90 degrees above, it's 90 degrees below. And a lot of people don't realize that.
It's a very strange feeling down there. And I think that, you know, in today's world, you know, we're talking about climate change, we're talking about so many different issues. And we had talked about this before, about, you know, it's really hard to walk that line between workers getting a paycheck.
Yeah, it is.
And about the fossil fuel industry. And I think that a lot of the coal miners themselves realize that this can't continue forever, and they are making adjustments. I heard about one, I can't remember what state it was, but the coal miners are actually becoming beekeepers. So I think that there's a different kind of view. And what do you hear from talking with the miners?
Well, they're trying to protect their jobs, and you know, there aren't too many of them that, at least that will at least speak openly about trying to change things, because it's their livelihood. Their families rely on that paycheck from that mine, and you know, to risk it all to do something else. I'm sure so many of them, if they were presented with an alternative, most of them would probably take the alternative. But that alternative doesn't exist in a state like West Virginia, where they're clinging to the fossil fuel industry. They've actually, you know, the legislation, the powers that be, they've actually, you know, kind of deterred any kind of sustainable energy enterprises in the state of West Virginia. And that's sad, because, you know, it eliminates the competition, I guess, is what it comes down to. As long as coal and gas are the only games in town, then, you know, there's no alternative. People fight tooth and nail to keep it, and understandably so.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Given opportunities and alternatives, you never know. But I don't know how long it'll be before we see those alternatives.
Well, I think I think it's really apparent that as much as we'd like to continue living the life that we've been living, that we can't just keep living this way. And we
can.
You know,
but the generations, they're the ones that are going to pay the price for the way
Greta,
we live.
You know, is making her voice heard, and you know, rightly so, because I think it's kind of unfortunate what the young people of today are left to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, well, here we are. I'm like 64 now, and so it's like. I know that things are changing, but probably the young people that are out there today, they're going to see those changes that are happening now that maybe could have been prevented. I don't know. You know, that's what we say is that, you know, hopefully we're not too late and we can think about this. But it is a very hard line when, you know, you are a worker and you are working in a union and that union is trying to protect your rights. And the whole idea about trying to survive. Can you imagine coal miners without a union?
Well, I can. Because I just imagine what it was like 100 years ago when fathers had to take their children into the mines with them to make enough money to feed and clothe their families. When you had children working in the coal mines, just as you did in the factories of Chicago or the garment district of New York, where, you know, children with missing fingers and missing parts of their scalp because they were little more than pieces of machinery. And that's the thing that existed then. And coal miners forced to work, you know, 15, 16 hours a day, never seeing the sunshine.
Yeah.
Coming out after the sun went down, you know, for 10 days in a row, they may not see the sunshine back then. And that's the way it was before a union. That's why, despite all of the fierce opposition to organizing, that's why they were able to remain in solidarity, because they had it so bad. They really didn't see an alternative except to risk their own lives and their own well-being for the good of everyone. So.
Now, on the TV show, we're running out of time when you did your wonderful song about Peabody Coal Company.
Oh, okay.
So we got to make sure that we have plenty of time to tell that story. I think a lot of the people, when you hear a Peabody Coal Company, you think of one thing is John Prine and his song Paradise.
Yeah.
So why don't you kind of give people a little idea of what that Paradise? And I've been there. I've been in that area, and it certainly is not a paradise anymore, is it?
No. There's a neighborhood right in my hometown of Wheeling, a neighborhood called Clearview. And there are still dozens and dozens of homes that surround what was once this beautiful farm. And Rick, today, the whole thing is an industrial waste dump. And right in the center of it, what they have a clear view of today is a slurry pond that contains millions of gallons of coal waste. Right in the middle of this beautiful residential area on the outskirts of my hometown. It's astounding to see. We have a West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection that they have to go through to get a permit. How any company could get a permit to destroy an entire neighborhood like that is beyond my wildest imagination. I mean, you're talking about I don't know how many community members, but well over 100 whose property values have been, just completely destroyed, and it's pretty amazing. Yeah, right in one of the main interstates through east to west is I-70. It runs from Denver to Baltimore, I guess indirectly, sort of Breezewood, Pennsylvania. But the main interstate is down to one lane in either direction, and it's been that way since January. They have signs up that say road construction. It's not road construction. They're longwall mining under the interstate. This is the same coal company. They're called Tunnel Ridge Coal Company. It's Tunnel Ridge Mine. It's the Alliance Coal Company. But they're longwall mining underneath the interstate right now.
Can you explain that, Tom?
I can't explain it, but I can tell you that they have enough, I guess just probably the rights to the coal that's underneath that highway is enough for us to sit in traffic. Sometimes I've lost 15 hours of my time because it's on my work route since January. So my time is money. I'm subsidizing the work of that particular coal company. It's so frustrating. To me, it's astounding. And if you were driving through, you would never know that that's what's happening. You would drive through and think, well, it doesn't look like a lot of work's going on. I hit a few bumps. What they're doing is they're taking a proactive approach to keeping the highway open as it sinks from the long wall that's going on underneath it. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of things we see daily, and that's the kind of things like my father, he's listening now, my father and family and friends in Wheeling, that's something that they don't think a whole lot about. It's just part of the reality of growing up in an area like that or living in an area like that. And the older I get, and since I've moved away, the more frustrated I become with seeing things like that. It's pretty sad.
Before you do that song, guys, I want you to make sure that you tell the story. I just want the listeners to learn a little bit about the way that you got into telling these stories about your connection with the Mine Workers Union.
Well, my connection with the Mine Workers Union was I was just compelled to write songs, and once I had written and recorded a good portion of what became the record, the Unbroken Circle Songs of the West Virginia Coalfields, it became obvious to me that I was telling their story. I was telling their history in song. So I made them aware of that, and they started inviting me to different events just to play, I think even just kind of peripherally. And then once this effort to retain their health care benefits for 18,000 of their union members and their families, once they began that effort, which was the 18,000 that lost their benefits, they lost it at the hands of primarily Peabody Coal, Arch Coal also to an extent, but Peabody had the biggest share of the blame in that. So I wrote a song that I shared with them, and they invited me to one of the rallies. Honestly, when I first went to the first rally, I had kind of a selfish motivation. It was like, wow, how cool is this? I'm going to be playing my songs for, thousands of coal miners and their families, and that all kind of went out the window when I saw these people that had been traveling on buses with walkers, some of them with their oxygen, and their sweet wives, and these incredible people. It brought tears to my eyes to see what was happening to them. That it was a matter of life or death for them if they had lost their health care. And so I got pretty passionate about it, and I wrote a lot of songs that I shared with them in the shadow of the Peabody headquarters.
Now, the song that we had talked about earlier, there was a story about you meeting with one of the people who was connected with that. Do you remember that story?
I remember it because it was just incredible. You and we talked today about how you never know what life is going to face you, or what you'll be faced with, or whatever, and you never know the connections that we make. Well, I learned my lesson about how you never know who's listening and who's watching. When I played a rally in Kentucky, Hendersonville, Kentucky, and I had written a song 2 days before, and it was called Peabody Promised, Peabody Lied, I took that was the slogan of the mine workers, and I didn't invent the title, but I wrote it, and I shared that song a day or two after I wrote it in Kentucky, drove 6 hours to join a group of college students in Charleston, West Virginia, the capital of West Virginia. And I actually went to go see the hockey game that night. I told the group, I said, I'd like to go see the Pittsburgh Penguins play hockey. They said, sure. So I go to Buffalo Wild Wings, sat at the bar, and this other fellow was there, and he was watching the hockey game. I said, oh, are you from Pittsburgh? He said, well, I have a house in Pittsburgh. I said, oh, okay. He said, I said, oh, well, where are you from? He said, well, I'm from Alabama. So I kind of got a smile. He's from Alabama. He has a house in Pittsburgh, and he's in Charleston, West Virginia. This guy is coal. So I said, oh, you're in the coal business? And he says, yeah. And I said, union mines? He said, well, we have both. So now I know he's brass. I said, oh, I was just wondering. I said, I was at the rally in Hendersonville, Kentucky yesterday. And he says, are you a coal miner? I said, no. I said, I'm a songwriter, and I just played my song at the rally. And he looked me right in the eye and said, Peabody promised, Peabody lied. And I just, nobody had heard that song. I just played it almost 24 hours before. And so he and we sat and watched the rest of the hockey game. We didn't talk about anything but hockey after that. But yeah, I asked him, I said, were you at the rally? He said, no. He said, I get all the rags, he said. That's what he told me. So that's an interesting thing, Tom, is to it's
think
really
about
interesting.
The power of music.
It is.
So here it is that this was one of the first times you performed that song.
The first
time that you performed the song.
It was less than 3 days old.
And that news of the power of what you were saying reached some of the top brass in the coal companies.
Yeah.
Now that's power.
Yeah, there was no question he was referring to the title of that song when I told him I played. So,
well, let's hear it.
Yeah, sure. So it's framed as a question to the miners for whom I was playing. Did you work in the mine since you were young and strong? Did you work for that company your whole life long? Did you give them all the best years you had to live to provide for your family on what they promised they'd give? Are you asking for something that you haven't earned? If you ain't with the union, well, buddy, you haven't learned. 'Cause years come and go, but the story's the same. A good man's forgotten, and greed is to blame. Promises made, promises broken. We'll be there where they run, and we'll be there when they hide. A promise was made, and the union has spoken. Peabody promised, Peabody lied. I'm just one man, but I'm honest and true. And one man alone, there's not a lot he can do. So in the union we stand, and in the union we're strong. With the union I'll stay, 'cause I know right from wrong. Promises made, promises broken, but we'll be there where they run, and we'll be there when they hide. A promise was made, and the union has spoken. Peabody promised, Peabody lied. Peabody promised, Peabody lied.
You know, Tom, when I heard you sing that song, that was it. It was like a light bulb went off, and I said, Tom's music needs to be heard by a wider audience.
Well, thanks.
And that's one of the reasons that we're so really proud to have you here on Folk Talk. And there's another story that was really, I think that the thing that was really interesting about the Woody Guthrie Festival this year was that we had these more or less like kind of, it wasn't quite a panel, but it was a kind of a discussion where we're able to educate the public. So that was one of the things that that I was involved in with Rick Nessler.
And it was fantastic. I really enjoyed your presentation.
And your presentation really was so filled with history, and even as someone who's read a lot about different labor songs and so forth, I heard things that I didn't know. And one of the things was about the bandana. Can you tell that story?
Oh, yeah. So the red bandana, that's, at least in the word redneck, it means a lot of things to a lot of people today. And it always deals with, the rural, folks or whatever. And but really, the word was galvanized in 1921 in Logan County, West Virginia, when the Union coal miners wore the red bandana to identify themselves in a battle that involved more than 15,000 Americans, armed insurrection, less than 100 years ago. We're coming up on the 100th anniversary. Exchanging gunfire and armed battle. There were planes, there were biplanes that were launched from Langley Field at the time, which is now our Langley Air Force Base. Billy Mitchell's planes. Billy Mitchell did not fly one of the ones that was involved in what we call the Battle of Blair Mountain in Logan County, West Virginia. But 4 biplanes were launched, and the pilots dropped pipe bombs by hand on the front lines of the advancing miners to keep them from advancing into the town of Logan. 3 of the biplanes crashed in the mountains of West Virginia. Air travel was pretty unreliable in 1921, particularly in the foggy mountains of West Virginia. Just the most fascinating of stories, the whole battle. It began a year before in May of 1920 with what was called the Matewan Massacre, where striking miners were thrown from their houses, or were at least in the process of being thrown from their houses, when a sheriff named Sid Hatfield and the mayor, Cabell Testerman, became among the first public servants in West Virginia to actually stand up to coal companies and told the company they weren't going to throw the miners out of their homes. Sid ultimately was assassinated by the Baldwin Phelps Detective Agency for sticking up for the miners and their families of Matewan. And that's what prompted these coal miners a year later to advance into the mountains of West Virginia on their way to Mingo. It was the march to Mingo that led to the Battle of Blair Mountain. You can find a lot of information about the battle. I've given you some, but I'm just scratching the surface. But it's a history, Rick, that has been suppressed. I was in my late 30s when I learned about the battle. Now, I grew up in West Virginia, was educated there 16 years. I have another friend, my friend Andrew. He's a luthier. He makes stringed instruments. I remember asking him, Andrew, how could I grow up in West Virginia and not know about the Battle of Blair Mountain until I was in my late 30s? And he said, Tom, that's easy one. He said, go back and get your West Virginia history books and open the cover, and right there on the front page it'll say published by Arch Cole. And that's how our history has been suppressed. And of course today we have the World Wide Web, so you can learn about the Battle of Blair Mountain. You just Google it, and which I hope some of your listeners are doing. But the red bandana, the miners wore the red bandana, and to identify themselves. And when these federal troops saw these poor, uneducated mountaineers with the red bandanas, that really galvanized the term to represent the poor and the uneducated of Appalachia. But of course, it's also a symbol of solidarity. We saw lots of the red bandanas in the state capitol just 2 years ago with the great teacher strike that we had in West Virginia, where all 55 counties participated in a strike. Complete solidarity, 55 strong.
You were telling me another story, Tom, that was really interesting about a woman earlier today. Was her name Helen? Was that it?
Well, they call her Mama K, Karen Gorel.
Oh, Karen. Okay, go ahead. Can you tell
Karen,
that story?
Yeah, once again. So I actually have a friend. My friend Julia is writing their story. She's writing a book, and she's going to look to get it published. I wrote a song. I don't have the lyrics, so I won't be able to share the song with you. But my song only scratches the surface once again of this amazing story. First of all, the Century Aluminum in Ravenswood, you might be familiar with the big Ravenswood strike. I mean, it was one of the last great labor victories in America in the 1990s. So a lot of these folks are the same people, workers from Century Aluminum. Well, when they shut down, and I don't know the exact year, it was around 2008, I think, or somewhere in that neighborhood. Once again, they took their health care. And Karen refused to accept that. And she, along with, they put all these retirees together. They called themselves Karen's Silver-Haired Army, Mama K and the Silver-Haired Brigade. And they followed those Century CEOs and their board members all over the country for 3 years. They slept in tents on the company ground. And yeah, they wound up winning a huge settlement for, I don't know how many millions, but once again, they all have their health care today because of the efforts. And that was a grassroots thing. That wasn't, they had some help from the Steelworkers Union. I'm not sure, exactly how to divulge how all that went down, but really, it was just Karen Gorel and her people that stood up for themselves. And the solidarity among that group, Rick, is just astounding. I take school groups and college students to go and meet her, to hear her story, and every time we meet with her, there are between 15 and 25 of her Silver-Haired Brigade. They all show up, and they all sit, and they tell their own particular part in the story, and they're so proud of it. It's remarkable.
Well, I think that was the thing that Pete Seeger believed in so much, was the way that we're going to change the world was participation. That you can't wait for somebody to give you the green light to do something. That when you see something that needs fixing, that you have to jump in and try to fix it. And I think the thing is that we all have our own way of doing that. Some people can stand on a line holding a sign. Some people can write a song. Some people can write a letter. some people can call a congressman. I think that the thing is to get involved and do something in your own way and try to make the world a better place. And that's what the unions have been trying to do for centuries. And I know that both you and I are proud to be members of Local 1000, the Traveling Musicians Union.
Yep.
And it is important that the idea of union is we. It's about not about taking care of me, but taking care of all of us. We talked about that idea, and you've been using your music as a tool to do that, to get people to think about the miners, think about the different kinds of union people who are struggling. Do you have any kind of song that you want to share about that?
Yeah, I guess indirectly what really struck me was you were talking about people that do these things, that fix things. And what's really remarkable to me about my music is the people that it has brought me in contact with. And those people have really influenced my thinking over the last 15 years. They've really taught me right from wrong, and they've taught me what could be if people would stand together. And so I'm grateful for that. One of those people is a woman in the Pittsburgh area. Her name is Rosemary Trump, an amazing union leader, and she asked me to to write a song actually to commemorate this woman. Her name was Fanny Sellens, and Fanny was a remarkable union leader. Back in she was assassinated in August of 1919. So that's why I was asked to write the song to commemorate 100 years. And she was killed on the picket line along with another miner and savagely beaten. And she and the miner are buried together. But she in particular was in it just to take care of the children of the miners who were trying to organize and the steel workers who were trying to organize. And this was right in my backyard. This wasn't southern West Virginia, but it was up in near Follinsby, West Virginia, just between Follinsby and Weirton, and then into western Pennsylvania, where I live now. Maybe the song just tells the story better than I could expand on it, but Pueblo, Colorado, Chicago, Illinois, and Wheeling, West Virginia. In New York, Lackawanna, Johnstown, PA, Cleveland, and Youngstown, Ohio. The steel strike of 19, a month before set. By September, it was strong, it was sound. And her blood-soaked picture in her union halls. Fanny Sellens, dead on the ground. She gave food to the starving and clothes to the babes, brought children into this hard world of labor and capital, poisoned by greed, seeking only to comfort the many. But the Steel Trust gunmen fired on the line, and miners' children she gathered round. And now her blood-soaked picture in their union halls. Fanny Sellens, dead on the ground. An angel of mercy, a guardian dear, a battle for freedom and love committed her here. Committed her here. Forget not the day Forget not the fight, forget not the martyr who's fallen. Forget not the Union, the AFL, or the UMWA. Forget not the bosses, the company thugs, or the reasons they gunned Fanny down. Put her blood-soaked picture in your Union Hall. Fanny Sellon's dead on the ground.
It's a powerful song. It's a powerful song.
It's a powerful story. It really
well,
is.
that's what we were talking about, this idea about the gift of storytelling, the gift of music, and what that enables you to do is to honor other people and make sure they're remembered.
Yeah.
And and so many people who are listening right now, all of a sudden, have a different idea about someone that they never knew about. Mm-hmm. Someone that risked her life for something that she believed in, and you captured it so beautifully in that song, and we're really glad that you're here to share it with us. So Tom Breiding, you are a busy fellow. You're out there in the world, traveling around, and I'm sure that people who are listening right now, who are watching our brand new YouTube channel here with Jason Baker, running the computer over there. And speaking of computers, I bet you might have a way that people can learn more about you and your music, right?
Oh, probably my website, tombreiding.com. If the spelling is the thing, it's BREIDING.
Yep, and it's one of those things that the best musicians are the ones that talk least about about how that people can find out more.
The marketing
about them.
geniuses that we are.
We're more concerned about the music and carrying things on, and that's what it's all about, folks. It's people like yourselves out there doing the work. I mean, that's what Utah, Phillips used to say is, it's about getting out there and doing the work. And the rest, he would always say to me, put your best efforts in your best capabilities of performing, and the rest will take care of itself. The word will get out there.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
that's what we're doing here at Folk Talk, is giving people a chance to be heard and their music to be heard. And I think we have a little bit of time left, so I want to make sure that you tell people a little bit about. You were telling me the other things that you do is help teach people from universities about your area.
Yes, I work at the Appalachian Institute at Wheeling University, and the Appalachian Institute, I host. I'm the sole coordinator of the immersion program, and we host about 30 plus schools a year. In the springtime, it's almost exclusively universities, spring and fall. Summertime, it's usually high school students. And I lead them on 5-day trips. I find sleeping quarters for them and make sure their groceries are bought to cook their meals, and then I plan all the programming, and that programming is usually serving the underprivileged, working for nonprofits, soup kitchens, and a lot of gardening, urban gardening in particular, in various food deserts. And in the unfortunate incident of tragedy, one summer in 2016 we had the terrible floods in southern West Virginia. Most of our work was spent with flood relief, just helping folks, and especially in a little town called Richwood, Pennsylvania, Richwood, West Virginia, place that's become special to me. And then we explore the coal industries and the gas industries. I take them to the offices of the local districts for the United Mine Workers and have them speak to some of my friends there, so that they can share the plight of the retirees right now and talk to them, answer their questions and concerns about mining itself. And then I take them to see, the pollution that's left behind at a place like the Tunnel Ridge in the neighborhood of Clearview that I talked about earlier. So yeah, that's what I do.
And how does the fracking fit into this whole thing?
Well, the biggest thing with the fracking that bothers me, and there are a lot of concerns, as you know, about the process itself and what it's doing to the water supply and whatever. But the elephant in the room, if you will, is the fact that it's all migrant workers that come to Appalachia to work. And I'm not talking about people from third world countries that are trying to make a better life for themselves. I'm talking about workers from Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, Louisiana, Arkansas. They already have really good jobs. These are high-paying jobs, and they're coming to my backyard in numbers that are so vast that there are RV camps on roadside across from impoverished people, across from old junkyards, and these RVs. I mean, some of them 150 up to 300,000 RVs. These are guys that are making big money. Well, they're not giving anything back. They're buying the RVs, they're camping roadside, and they'll work for the 2 or 3 or 4 years and make the big bucks and go back home to what they call home. And meanwhile, we have a dying coal industry where we could use a lot of jobs. And the gas industry does provide some, but not nearly as much as it should to the people in West Virginia and Western Pennsylvania. All of those jobs that are going, and they just say, it takes too long to train. This is highly specialized work. Well, they should take the time to train the people who's, who are sharing their riches with the rest of the country right now, and with the people that are making lots of money.
Yeah, I've read a lot about that kind of thing, where with the fracking industry, it's get out quick. Make the money as quick as you can, and then you just get out of Dodge.
And that's it.
And that's it. And so you have these temporary booms, and then it moves on to the next place.
Yeah. And the roads are a mess. The traffic is a mess. I mean, it's bad. Once again, I probably have friends in from my hometown that are listening now thinking, well, it's not really that bad. It really is. They've just gotten used to dealing with it, I think. And these places that were once beautiful are just totally destroyed now. Places I used to swim and, and fish, they're gone.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, folks, is it's all about balance and and trying to figure out a way. And we don't have the answers. We don't have the answers, but we have a discussion. I think that's the important thing that's going on right now, is people are starting to talk and people trying to think and about what is this future going to be, and how are we going to survive with all of this pollution, all of the chaos that's around the country right now. We're not going to go into the chaos of the country right now, because that could be another show. But Tom, I'm wondering if you have, we have what, about not quite 10 minutes left. About 7 minutes left. So I'd like you to do another song and have some final thoughts from you.
Yeah, in light of this discussion that we've just had, I'll share with you the institute where I work. It was founded on the ideals of the Catholic bishops of Appalachia, who back in the 1970s came up with a document called "This Land is Home to Me." So the then director, my friend Beth, when she hired me, she handed me a copy. She said, this is the Institute's Bible, if you will, so you need to read it. Well, this title struck me immediately because of the very thing I just discussed with you. These workers that come from Texas and Oklahoma to frack in Ohio County and Wheeling, West Virginia, this is not home to them. And they're great people, obviously, because they're hard workers. I have a soft spot for anybody that's a hard worker. But there are issues when a place is kind of disposable to you and it's not special to you. So just looking at the title, it struck me, and I was compelled to write a song, particularly as it pertained to my hometown of Wheeling, West Virginia, which was once a great steel town. And just how, our area, where I come from, has served our country for a century and a half, and what we've kind of seen left behind. So one day I was compelled enough to sit down and actually write a song of the same title. A great history is winding down in this region and in this town. The smoke is cleared and silence falls, and the buildings tumble down. And as the rivers wash the banks of time and set our sons and daughters free, as these children roam, may they not forget this land is home to me. May its lessons be our foundation in this new age of transformation. For our fathers and mothers, they settled here to build and feed a nation. In this country of lasting freedom, nothing less, their legacy taught me to pray, lest I forget this land is home to me. And to some our natural treasures, to fill their lives with earthly pleasures. For the riches and wealth of others, to my own I care not to measure. But may they leave our water clean from these mountain tops serene. And in their careless steps, may they not forget this land is home to me.
Tom Breiding, what a wonderful pleasure to have you here and to share your thoughts. That song says it all.
Thank you, Rick.
That song says it all. I mean, if we all cared about the land, we all cared about the place that we lived, this world would be a better place. Yeah. And that's what we're doing, one step at a time, is trying to do something in our own way, trying to do like Woody Guthrie, find something wrong and fix it, right?
Fix it. I love it. I love that.
And that's what we're all about today here on Folk Talk. And this is Folk Talk 99.3 FM, WBTV-LP, Burlington, from the Media Factory in the south end of Burlington. This is 99.3 FM, WBTV-LP, streaming live at 993wbtv.org, and also heard on the Folk Music Notebook, Ron Olesko's 24/7 wonderful programming. So it's been really great to have you here. We've only got a few seconds here to go out, don't we, Jason? Okay, we've got about a minute. You want to say anything to all your listeners out there, Tom?
Yeah, I'd like to say hello to everybody. Coming shows, I'd have to look at my website. Honestly, it's true. I'm busy, and that
he's so busy doesn't know where he's going.
Up here, so.
That's October 7th.
Yeah.
October 7th at North Country Brewing Company.
Oh yeah, that's a new place for me, and that'll be kind of a fun evening, so it won't be quite as somber as the radio show.
October 12th at Natalie's Coal-Fired Pizza in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, let me tell you about those gigs real quick. Is my friend Bill Toms, I've played in his band, Bill Toms and Hard Rain, featuring the Soulville Horns. I've played in that band for going on 20 years now, and we've got a tremendous schedule coming up in October. It's a lot of fun. It's a rock and soul band, and I just play guitar. Don't have to do any talking and sing a little background vocals. I really get to enjoy myself. But that's a great band. Check out Bill Toms. Yeah.
And so, folks, there are a lot of things that you can find out, current information, because, these things get aired multiple times. So you can figure out where Tom is playing at his website, which again is
TomBreiding.com. Tom, BREIDING.com.
And this is Rik Palieri and our wonderful technician here, Jason Baker, who makes everything seem so easy.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.
All right. So we're going to see you again next week on Folk Talk. All right.